my name is Gregory Martin, and this is my poem, Seasons. In the spring, life begins to sprout. From frosty chills we have come out. The birds are singing, the snow melts away, as it gets warmer day by day. A few months ahead, summer it will be. More pools open, you will see. Long sunny days are many a reason for making summer a popular season. The world becomes colorful in the fall. The leaves descend from trees so tall. Some birds soon to the south they go, as winter is coming with its ice and snow. The cold steps forth. Winter is here, the final season of the year. Frigid and barren, lots of ice. If you love the cold, then winter feels nice. There are seasons of life too. We must go through each one, because having just one wouldn't be fun. Everything changes at some point in time. Just a word of advice. Find joy in all things, and life will be nice.
Gamer boy. Video games are my life. I'll probably never find a wife. Real life sucks. It's very boring. In my games I could be storing. Stuck at home with dad and mom. They say video games will make me dumb. In my games I could be anything. In those worlds I am king. Bullies I can delete away. New friends are here to stay. Life is easy in the game. Game Boy is my name.
Mother Nature's Battle by Sammy Rixmann. Come out for dinner. Please, can I play a little longer? You shouldn't be on your screen. Go out and enjoy the grass that's fresh and green. But if I keep playing this game, it could bring me fame. All you do is play Fortnite. Why not go get tucked into your bed, cozy and tight? Go out in the sun, or maybe go for a run. I'm going to pout. Do I really need to come out? Yes. Fine. Wow, look at the bright blue sky. Oh me, oh my. Look how much our garden has grown. I guess being outside is better than my phone.
Hello, my name is Emmett Ray, and this is my third place entry, The View from the Window. Part 1. Sight. The ability to communicate is possibly the most important attribute that living beings possess. Many other attributes are important, but communication, to have your thoughts heard, to have them acknowledged, is something I cannot possibly understate the importance of. Almost all organisms can do more than simply see. However, sight is something of utmost importance in my life. My view of the world is only a small sliver of what many enjoy, but I use this sense to its fullest. It starts at the beginning of the platform, serving the number 3231 train, which passes through my station en route from Toronto to Denver, which runs twice a month. My station is home to 2 tracks, one going east, the other to the west. The platforms were once smooth and polished stone, but over the decades, under millions of footsteps, they have become worn and a bit dingy. To my left, there is a simple wooden ticket counter, while off to my right, some wrought iron benches. This simple layout has remained constant throughout the century that the station has been in operation. From my position behind the glass, I have seen a great number of things, some quite noteworthy, but most of little note. I hope the following will prove noteworthy to you. This event took place almost a century ago, yet the memory remains fresh. It was a Wednesday, mid-afternoon, and the sun was shining much hotter and brighter than it had any business doing so. Past the dirty silver tracks that gleamed in the sun, the scenery reflected the heat. Looking straight ahead, one would be struck by a seemingly endless scrub desert, stretching into the horizon. If you were inclined to look closer, however, the signs of life would readily reveal themselves to you. Here you would see small wiry plants just surviving on a few drops of water scattered deep into the ground, small animals scurrying around the sand, as well as in flight, and serene cacti speckling the landscape. Life in the desert remains constant until a train starts rumbling along the horizon. Gradually, as if rising to an alarm clock, the station's sleepy inhabitants start to stir. The ticket taker stops slumping in his sleep and sits up a little straighter, while the few who want to sell a couple of dollars worth of cheap trinkets start gathering their wares. As this is happening, the train changes from a small black dot on the horizon that follows a thin line of train tracks into a longer, lapis blue smudge with a small plume of almost invisible gray smoke wafting upwards. Both smoke and smudge come closer and closer, getting larger and larger until the whole train rushes into view. At its peak, the steam engine was the height of performance and technological sophistication. At a passing glance, the engine and cars of this particular locomotive looked quite fancy, but if you look closer, the sheer amount of effort and detail began to reveal themselves too. The thin golden trim on all the straight lines and edges, and the deep red paint on the wheels, which stood in stark contrast to the ever-present dust that blanketed life at the train station.
Hi, my name is Sophie Jefferson, and I wrote a short story called Undiscovered Truth. I sat alone quietly on my bed, thinking about where to go fishing tomorrow. My thoughts were interrupted by what sounded like faint screams. I could tell the screams were getting closer. Bang, 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 then silence. I recognized the sound of a gunshot from hunting with my grandfather. Who's hunting at night, I thought. Another bang, followed by the sound of breaking glass. I rushed downstairs to find my mom laying still in a puddle of her own blood. "Mom!" I cried. There was no reply. The door opened and two strangers rushed through the doorway. "Come with us," one of the men said. They grabbed me and threw me into the back of a Mack truck. There were lots of children, some with black eyes, bloody noses, bruised arms, and even broken bones. Two other men were sitting with belts in their hands. One little shirtless boy squirmed in hope of escaping. His disobedience was met with a belt. A small but visible tear slipped down to his cheek from under his lashes. The full moon lit up the landscape as we traveled. I had never seen this land before. It was eerie and beautiful at the same time. I must have drifted off, but I was awoken by the sound of screeching brakes. The truck was in front of a strange building. The back of the truck opened, and we were all ordered to get in line. One by one, we were marched into the building. The first thing I remembered was walking past an enormous room full of kids. There must have been over 500 there, all like me, dark-skinned and thin. I stopped to get a better look. I was greeted with the sting of leather across my back. Get back in line. It was no longer a question of how long I was going to stay here. I was not in control of that. I was only 14, but if I could find a way out, I would find a way to live. I soon realized I was being led in the opposite direction of the others. I looked back and saw all the other kids. One by one, they were stripped of their clothes, their long hair cut short. Our traditions, our culture was being erased. "No!" I begged them to stop, but no one listened. The grip of my captor tightened, making it hard to breathe. He brought me to a basement and down a long hallway to a large locked metal door. As the door opened, I peered inside. It was black as night. I could not see anything. There was a strong push from behind, and I hit the floor, the door slamming shut, revealing only darkness. In the obscurity, I could hear someone breathing. "Who's there?" I whispered. A reply from the darkness hissed, "Get away." I moved towards the sound with my arms out. "Is that you?" I spoke. "Yeah," he said calmly. I sat beside him. "Where are we?" I asked. "You don't know?" He spoke. "No." He approached the door and flipped a light switch. A single bulb cast a meager light. As my eyes adjusted, I could see the face behind the voice. "It's some sort of school," he said. "Seems more like a prison to me. They threw me in here before I could find out." "How long have you been in here?" I inquired. "I'm not sure. Time stands still in this place," he responded sadly. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lil Feather, but here they call me Simon. Yours?" "Dakota," I whispered. I was so tired. The light turned itself off. "Could you please keep it on?" I pleaded. He nodded. "Why are we here?" I asked, tears filling my eyes. "The nuns say we are here to learn about Christ.
but I have not seen anything but cruelty and punishment. Don't cry, Dakota. We are survivors. We'll find a way out of here. He grabbed a strand of my hair and moved it behind my ear. I promise.
It wasn't that Lewis didn't want to be a Viking. It was just that he was tired of the cruel winds, the spattering rain, and everyone bellowing orders like he was deaf. Sheesh. His only real comfort now was his deadly shadow night dragon, but his dragon was sleeping soundly in the front pocket of his worn travel coat. And of course, hang on. Let's start back at the beginning, for, as everyone knows, it's awfully rude to just jump right into a story without anyone knowing what is going on. It all started a long time ago, when dragons roared, Vikings pillaged, and one special boy embarked on an adventure. That special boy was Lewis, a Viking boy. Now Lewis was quite an ordinary-looking boy. You would not think of Lewis being the main character or hero of a book. He was thin and scrawny, with dark brown hair and no huge muscles, unlike most Viking boys. Usually you would think of his three show-off cousins, Thorvald, Thorstein, and Thorfinn. They were big, muscly, and rather pleasant if you happen to like unpleasant, big, ugly bullies. And as they are not the main characters of this story, let's return to Lewis. Lewis was the son of Eric the Bold, chief of the Hoosfooses. Please don't ask what it means, no one quite knows. So that made him almost royal. His dragon's name was Furious, and he was as black as the night sky. All the Hoosfooses were out on the big, wide ocean, rocking on a Viking longship known as the Fury. Another ship sailed behind them, called the Baltic Beauty. Both of these ships were full of Vikings and supplies. After a long day of sailing, Lewis lay down on his soft bed and was soon fast asleep, dreaming of the dreamland they were sailing to. Meanwhile, 10 kilometers behind the ship, a massive, three-headed dragon rose out of the ocean. This type of dragon was a slithering scimitar, but even worse was that this was a triple-header. It was covered head to toe, clawed, in seaweed, and basically every single disgusting thing under the ocean, from being underwater sleeping for 15 years. It had been roused from La La Land when the two ships had sailed overhead. It was hissing over and over, "I smell him." You see, this dragon was troubled by a vision of the future, where he had learned he would be defeated by a boy named Lewis. The scimitar had no idea who this Lewis boy was, but he knew he must destroy him before the prophecy came true. And now this boy was a few kilometers away. The dragon couldn't believe his luck.
Great-Grandpa, I remember when you smiled at me warmly as I ran to you for a hug. When I would visit you, why did you remember me then? I remember when we stopped visiting you, when we were too busy, when we had more important things to do. How could I have changed that? I remember when we heard about it. I was sad that day, but didn't pay it much mind. Why didn't I care back then? I remember when you couldn't recognize me. I went away to cry. I still do to this day. Why does it have to be so hard? I remember when I was writing this poem. You're not gone yet, but I still have to wonder. When will you be?
Books by Adele Aud. While reading, there are many worlds you can immerse yourself in, from dark, haunting worlds to unusual, beautiful ones, from ones like our own to drastically different ones. You can learn about the past, of events that shape today, or about things imagined. Books are marvelous works that can help you get away from these strange times, even just for a little.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Millen, and I'm going to read my story, The Resolution. Okay. She stood at the edge of the cliff, staring down into the raging sea below. Should I? Shouldn't I? Were the only thoughts running through her head as she continued to stare. Her life wasn't that bad. Loving parents, good friends, a nice house. But if she went back for whatever reason, it would mean she would have to face him. Him with eyes as gray as the storm clouds that were approaching. Him with that devilish smile that never fails to get her excited. But soon the smile that had just formed on her face faded as quickly as it appeared. Devilish, that's the best way to describe him. She moved closer to the edge. The tip of her toes pointed out towards the sea. The wind began to pick up, making her rock gently back and forth. It was oddly soothing to her. It put her mind in a slight ease, allowing her to think more clearly, to remember why she came here, what happened on this night with him. "You son of a..." Before he could say anything, she struck him right across the face. "How could you?" He rubbed his his hand on his burning cheek, frowning. "Why are you so hysterical?" She pulled out all the pictures she had found hidden underneath the floorboard and threw them at his feet. He looked down at them. At first she thought he played dumb, pretend he didn't know what she was talking about, but his eyes looked back up, completely unfazed. "So what do you want me to say? Sorry?" She clenched her jaw as tightly as she clenched her fist, trying to contain her rage. "Do these girls know about each other?" she asked, trying to sound cocky. He rolled his eyes. "If you think it's so important, why don't you tell them?" "That's it. I'm done," she cried. She turned away from him and walked towards the door, but was blocked by his looming figure. "And where do you think you're going?" "Leaving," she said, her eyes burning with anger. "For good." He laughed. "Yeah, right. I'll give you a week. No, 3 days before you come crawling back." "Well, prepare to be disappointed," she said, pushing him out of the way and continuing her walk towards the door. Behind her, she heard him shout, "Go ahead, but you'll come back." And then in a low whisper, she heard him say, "You always do." That caused her to snap. She grabbed for the vase that was sitting on the nearby coffee table. Before he had a chance to react, she swung it like a baseball bat into the side of his head. He collapsed onto the floor, pieces shattered around his body, with the exception of a jagged piece that was jammed to the side of his forehead. Crimson ooze began to slowly drip down his face. For a moment she didn't care. He had finally shut up. She was happy. But then the horror of what she did began to slowly sink in. Her hands unclenched and started to shake with panic. She looked down at his lifeless form. She felt herself begin to walk slowly back until she felt her back against the door. Her hand grabbed for the doorknob. The second she turned the knob, she burst through and ran as fast as she could, not knowing where she was going as long as it wasn't there. Her vision was blurred by the flashing images of the fresh corpse that was lying on the floor back at the house. She tried to push it out of her mind, but it was impossible. She didn't know where she was going until she saw a cliff nearby and felt a rush of energy as her mind was now focused on one thing. She ran to the cliff, fully prepared to run off the edge, but a sudden force stopped her in her tracks. She stood at the edge. The gray clouds had now covered the sky and had grown darker. The sound of thunder made her head rattle. Motionless, she watched the vicious waves below crash against the cliff and sink back into the ocean. She felt numb from head to toe, frozen in place. She was certain that she would stand here for all eternity.
Hi, I'm Sydney Welsh, and this is my story, The Sunrise Folk. Orion's mother had always warned him of the moonlight. It was the sign that danger was rapidly approaching and there was no time to waste. "If you can see the moon, you're already too late," she would whisper to him in the cramped, dirty, underground bunkers that their people hid in each night. For years, he had followed her orders and listened to her advice. It was no difficult task. Growing up, mentors would always tell him and his fellow peers stories about the moonlight folk. They were ruthless and evil. There was no warm glow that surrounded them, and just cool clouds of gray air. They couldn't warm someone's heart with a simple touch, but there were rumors that they could suffocate one from the inside with their teeth-chattering magic. Orion would walk down the hallway in the bunker and would be greeted with the infamous posters. When the sunlight folk stumbled too close to the doors that opened to the ground and the fresh air, they would be greeted with posters upon posters of giant moonlight folk with cool undertones and large teeth. So many large teeth. It was less a warning and more a way to scare those who wanted to wander above during the nightly hours. Most nights, Orion would turn right back around and go to the room his family had been assigned to. He would get back into the bed stuffed between all his cousins and forget about the midnight walk folk completely. That specific night, however, Orion was feeling restless. He had tossed and turned for hours, paced the room, walked back and forth towards the door, and there could possibly be no harm if he were to walk through, just once, just to see what it was like out there at night. His mind kept telling him not to, and he was fully aware as to how wrong it was, how against the rules it would be. Obviously, if Orion was found, he would be punished. However, what if he wasn't found missing when his family woke up? What if he found a way to return back to his bed without waking anyone before the morning alarms went off? He didn't see any harm in trying. Orion was well aware that the more he stared at the metal door and its threatening posters, the more freaked out he would be. It would be best to simply charge it and not look back. He wouldn't be long, just a quick scan. It would be better if he was taking fighting classes. Only the Sunlight folk who were 15 or older were able to do fight training. Orion was only 14, but sometimes he would see his cousins practicing their fighting stances or watched as their hands moved in peculiar motions to bring the heat and sunbeams to the surface. He watched the sunlight's beauty as it graced their palms, almost as if rubbing in the fact that Orion was forbidden to fight. He pushed all those thoughts aside and ran at the big metal door with full force. It was surprisingly light, shoving open and throwing Orion into the grass. Just like that, he was outside, the air in his lungs calming down his rushed breaths. The reality seemed to be settling in, a sunlight folk panting on dewy grass, alone. Orion was now an easy target for any moonlight folk, and he had no doubt that they would instantly tear him apart with those large, scary teeth. As Orion pushed himself off the wet grass, wiping off the stains on his knee and checking out the bruises on his arm, he was surprised. He heard nothing. He couldn't see far because of how dark it was, but Orion had a good feeling that he was not in trouble, and no moonlight folk had found him.
Hi, my name is Jean Modished, and my poem is called Ode to a Firefly. The fireflies, they wink at me, their little bulbs alight with glee. Those summer nights I treasure most make me the firefly's eager host. I blink and twitch and strain to see that flash of light that floats past me. Oh, little firefly, hurry on. Your light show ends at breaking dawn. Your beauty is so fleeting, then you're off before I've found my pen. It's very clear that I should say the words I've saved for you all day. Dear little firefly, you help me see those tiny joys are here for me, and nature's wonders are a gift that gives the human soul a lift.
Hi, my name's Judy Selinger, and I wrote this poem called Annie's Mittens because I happened to see my Aunt Annie's mittens, and this is what they were like. These old mittens tell a story of a life lived well and true, threadbare and worn, aged and weathered, and patched with red or pink or blue. Her life began when times were hard, but never once did she complain. She toiled from dawn until the dark, then rose and set to work again. She survived the Great Depression when nothing could be cast aside. Every item had some value, and so she darned those mitts with pride. Out on the farm she worked each day, her 7 kids raised with delight. Music was her family's pleasure, so the guitars came out each night. Thus her life was like these mittens. At times some tears and rifts appeared, but out that needle came once more, and life was lived with naught to fear. And so these mittens I cannot cast aside nor throw away, for they impart a precious lesson to mend life's rifts by end of day.
Hi, my name is Joyce Bader, and I am here to read a poem called Memories of a Lifetime. When our mind feels past memories come seeping through, as if some big dam has finally released them from captivity, and then as they begin cascading down the mountainside, they are creating a waterfall that is so splendid to behold. Each tiny droplet that is falling was once a part of our life, and as we watch, we see mirrored in each droplet that falls a vision from the past of days long gone and long forgotten. And we find that it is impossible to look away from the past. Although our past has been hidden from our view until now, hidden away from prying eyes and the guilt we had left behind, there is a part of the heart and mind that feelings held onto, letting loose only tiny snippets of the pictures stored within. Could there actually be a very valid reason for this journey that is taking us over the rough and craggy parts of our life? As these memories continue to flow down the vast mountainside, they have reached their destination, a pool as clear as glass. From time to time, should we not go and pay a visit to our pool? Memories may fade from view, but underneath this still water lies a lifetime of what was once our hopes, desires, and dreams, each droplet meant to show us how deep and how far we have come.
Hi, I'm Kathy Greentree, and this is my story, Thoughtful Box. Thoughtful Box Homes of the Future Incorporated. Can you hold the line? Yes, I squeaked. The kitchen lights flicked on and then off, on and then off, on and then off. I held the phone with both hands as insipid hold music trickled out of the receiver, note by note. Don't think about the lights, don't think about the lights. The lights flicked on and off. Dad, Mom's doing it again. We're going to the park, my husband called as he shepherded our daughter out the door. The door bid them a pleasant farewell. Enjoy the park, Stephen. Enjoy the park, Emily, it said. On, off. Ugh. The music ended, replaced by a bland male voice. Thoughtful Box Homes of the Future allow you to enter a world of domestic bliss. Your IntelliRactive smart home takes all the work out of housework, and all with just a thought. Efficiency, entertainment, and information customized to fit your needs. Thoughtful Box, just think about it. As the music resumed, I looked around the kitchen. The toaster, the blender, and the microwave oven were askew, cords hanging limply. The coffee pot was on its side, the emergency battery pack taken out. Thoughtful Box Homes of the Future Incorporated, how can I help you? Hello? Yes? I purchased your Thoughtful Box home command system, and I'm having some trouble with it. My eyes landed on the window. The automatic shade began to descend. I looked at the floor and gripped the phone harder. Can I have your name and your account number? My name's Huxley, Daisy Huxley. I consulted the rumpled paper in my hand. My account number is A4679355854. All right, Mrs. Huxley, have you tried to reset the chip? That solves 90% of common problems customers have with our Thoughtful Box system. I just got it installed yesterday, so it isn't healed enough for a hard reset. I picked at the scab on my temple where the chip had been inserted. Can you tell me which system you're having a problem with? All of them? I can't stop thinking about them. The refrigerator began reciting a grocery list in its no-nonsense tone. In a moment, it would spit out a paper copy with little check boxes for easy shopping. Just one more in the pile. I stepped around a laundry basket and moved into the living room. In the distance, I heard the clothes dryer roar to life. Shit. I plopped onto the couch. The little lamps flicked on and then off again. I cringed. Your issue, the tech lady finished. I'm sorry, can you repeat that, I asked? There are things going on here. The Thoughtful Box IntelliRactive television flicked on and then off and then on again. We'd named it Telly. It had seemed funny at the time. The current temperature is 4 degrees Celsius, Telly said, sounding more than anything like a ransom note. Current weather is partly cloudy with scattered showers in the afternoon. I slid from the couch onto the floor and lay on my back looking at the ceiling.
My name is Jean Modished, and my short story title is I Am Bruce. If I told you my name was Bruce Wayne, you would likely laugh. I don't look anything like Batman, and I don't live in Gotham City. Instead, I live in a run-down walk-up in Delhi with 4 kids, 2 bedrooms, and a single parent. And yes, they call me Bruce Wayne. I can't remember my real parents. I was taken from them when I was only a few weeks old. Some guy found me and my siblings in a burlap bag by the side of the road on the 9th concession, and must have decided I was the one that was worth keeping. I guess you could call it my lucky day. He drove a rusted-out Nissan with a Duck Dynasty decal in the rear window and an ashtray full of players' butts, but I didn't care. His big fingers brushed the dirt and leaves from my coat and cradled me in the palm of his hand. He had a whiskery face and beady brown eyes, and his only words were, "Huh, will you look at that?" When he tucked me into a smelly old blanket on the front seat next to an empty Tim Hortons bag, I took a few feeble sniffs and fell asleep. And that was how I joined my first family. In the beginning, it was hard to get used to all the noise and commotion of kids. Made me nervous, let me tell you. They like to shriek and holler and bicker and fight most of the time. This caused the man to yell and curse at them, especially after he had finished off a few mugs of that yellow, hoppy-smelling stuff.
Hello, my name is Gail Heald-Taylor, and I was surprised and elated when I discovered that I was the winner this year of the, short story contest in Norfolk County. Anyways, my story is called The Summer I Was 19, and many, many years ago, I was going to Europe. I was going to be teaching the children of the armed forces in Germany when I was 19. And I visited my father up in Whitecourt, and he suggested that he wanted me to meet someone called Ernst. He said he was working out in the oil fields, but he wasn't a typical wrench monkey, as they called them, in the oil fields. This fellow, Ernst, my father said, was quite literary. He read and he wrote, and he was quite intellectual, and he was quite anxious to meet me to tell me all about Germany. So I'll start here when we went out on a picnic out on the McLeod River. This is in Alberta, in the foothills of Alberta actually, and the streams then in 1959, the water in the river was as clear, as wonderfully blue, you could drink out of it. There was no pollution at all in those days, many, many, many years ago. So I meet Ernst on a sunny day in July 1958. We sit on a red plaid car blanket on the rocky shoreline of the McLeod River, just west of Whitecourt. The sky is forget-me-not blue, and the roar of rushing, swirling water, tumbling and crashing, is all we hear, except for the occasional fish jumping and slapping at the surface. The river is like a glass of sparkling water. We can see right to the bottom to the gray-blue boulders and rocks on the riverbed. Beyond the river, the forest is a thick wall of green, black, the trees crowded so tightly not a shard of sunlight peeks through. Ernst brushes an unruly strand of hair off his forehead. His thick ink-black hair, neatly trimmed, groomed around his ears, frames his pale, thin face. His eyes are dark and striking. He has a slim build, a bit taller than me, and wears casual slacks with a white shirt open at the collar. Clean, not handsome, but nice looking. He's older than me, in his early or mid-30s, but such a youthful demeanor. Sitting with his feet outstretched, we begin to talk. I'm going to flip it over. And maybe not. Just a moment. Sitting with his feet outstretched on the blanket, Ernst kicks off his sandals and smiles. "Tell me all about yourself," he says. "What do you like about teaching? What are your interests? What do you enjoy doing in your spare time?" I'm taken aback by surprise at his comments. I expected to learn more about Germany, sights to see, cities to visit, and festivals not to miss. I want to know more about Germany, and he's asking me to talk about myself. This is not at all what I expected. Nevertheless, I'm pleased. None of the other men, well, boys really, that I'd known had ever asked me about my interests. They always want to talk about themselves or sports or cars or how much money they make. Ernst leans forward, placing his elbows on his knees, his fist under his chin, listening intently to every sentence, every word I share about my students and my upcoming teaching in the Canadian base in Germany. He makes me feel comfortable and relaxed. He points his fancy camera in my direction. I finger comb a shoulder-length chestnut hair away from my face, smooth the wrinkles on my new white slacks, and smile. I hear a snap, and then another. This is beginning to feel like a date, but he's far too old for me. "What's Germany like?" I asked him, anxious to get a sense of what to expect when I get there. The images I have of the country are only what I've garnered from old newsreels and war movies with scenes of streets in rubble, the aftermath of the bombings. And so Ernst tells me all about his experience in Germany and how he escaped. He was conscripted in the war, and how he escaped the Germans and hid in a boxcar in order to escape from them. And so he went on, and his eyes darken, a frown creases his forehead, and his voice takes on a different tone, dark, veiled, and somber. He pauses for a moment, contemplating either how much he should tell me or imagines a teenager might like to be interested in hearing. He sweeps his tongue across the top lip. "I came here out of Germany to take time to rethink my life and what my country had become during the war." Rethinking his life? The men I met, their lives were just fine as they are. Ernest's voice rises. I hated Hitler and everything he stood for, what he was doing to the Jews and how he was destroying Europe. I too was horrified, and so we go on. And then he tells me how he fled, and then he looks into my eyes, searchingly, filled with feeling. "You are the first person I've told this story to." His voice is gravelly. "Thank you for listening." I feel the heat rise in my face as a wave of emotion washes over me. I'm honored that I'm the first person he's told his story to, and I also feel empathy, respect, admiration, understanding, and awe at his courage. A glimmer of a smile crosses his face. To answer your question as to why I came to Canada, I wanted to come to a peaceful country where I could reflect on my future. He sips his coffee from the thermos that Mum sent with us. "And now I meet you." Ernst's voice turns serious all of a sudden. "When you get to Germany, I want you to go to Hamburg to meet all my friends," he says, smiling broadly. I really want them to meet you." And then I'll go to the end. One single afternoon, 4 hours on a July day in 1958, on the McLeod River near Whitecourt, Alberta. Looking back now, at 82, I replay those hours over and over like an old scratched vinyl record. What did that afternoon mean to Ernst? What did it mean to me? I sift through what he said, reform my thoughts that went through my still teenage mind at the time, and revisit the feelings that were developed that afternoon. I recall how he looked at me, how gently he spoke, the intensity of his feelings, his reluctance to say goodbye. Why was he so intent on my meeting his friends? It's stuck. His friends in Hamburg. And why did Jürgen, Ursula, Rolf, and Gigi treat me so kindly when I stayed with them for an entire week, taking me to all of Ernst's favorite places, the opera, museums, concerts, and the boat ride on the Outer Ulster, as if they hadn't thought that I had some place in Ernst's heart. Had he fallen in love with me? I'll never know. And what about me? Did I feel something more than compassion, empathy, and awe? I'm left wondering. Perhaps it might have been quite different had I known him for an extended period of time. Maybe if I'd met him in later years, when I was more mature and ready for a thoughtful, learned, sensitive man. Who knows what might have been? At that time, my mind was filled with sailing from Canada to a new adventure on another continent, and so I'll simply never know. After much contemplation, I understand now that we were oceans apart, Far away, an emotional depth was as far away as we were oceans apart as far as our emotional depth was concerned. Ernst was mature in his 30s, re-examining his life, searching for meaning, while I was a sprite of 19 whose idea of the future was planning for next week, packing my trunks and boarding the ship for Europe. Although even after 63 years, I still remember that sunny day fondly in 1958 when I was 19, the last summer I was a teenager.